Chapter 1, The Silent Village. The road stretched endlessly before Daniel Carter as he drove through the dense fog that rolled in like a living thing. His GPS had lost signal miles ago, and now he was following nothing but the dim glow of his headlights. He had been on his way to a client meeting when a detour sign forced him onto an unfamiliar road. Before he knew it, he was lost. Then, through the mist, a sign appeared. "Welcome to Blackwood. Population, 312. Daniel had never heard of Blackwood before, but the sight of a town, any town, was a relief. He rolled into the village, the car's tires crunching softly over the dirt road. But something felt wrong. The streets were empty. The houses stood silent, their windows dark. A cold unease settled in his chest. Then he saw them. Figures, barely visible, standing in the doorways, in the alleys, behind the fog. Watching. Unmoving. He stopped the car. The figures did not. Chapter 2, The Smiling Man. Daniel parked outside what appeared to be the town's only diner. The neon sign above the door flickered weakly, Blackwood Cafe. Inside, the place looked like it had been frozen in time. The booths were clean, the counter polished, but there was an unsettling stillness to it all. Then, the bell above the door jingled. A man in a suit stepped inside. His grin was too wide, his eyes too bright. He moved with a strange fluidity, like a marionette being pulled by unseen strings. "Welcome," the man said, his voice smooth as silk. "You're just in time." "For what?" Daniel asked, his throat dry. The man's grin widened. "For the night to begin." A cold wind blew through the diner. The lights flickered. And when they steadied again, the man was gone. Chapter 3, The Sound of Scraping. Daniel stumbled out of the diner, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The streets were still empty, but he could feel them. The figures in the fog. Watching. His car wouldn't start. Cursing, he grabbed his phone, but the screen was blank, no service, no battery. Then he heard it. A scraping sound. Slow. Methodical. Coming from behind him. He turned. A figure stood in the middle of the street. A woman, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Her hands hung limply at her sides, but in one, she dragged something sharp across the pavement. Scrape. 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 Then she moved. Not walking, gliding. Silent. Fast. Daniel ran. Chapter 4, The Church Bells. His legs burned as he sprinted through the streets, searching for anywhere to hide. Then, in the distance, he heard something strange, church bells, ringing through the fog. A church. He turned a corner and saw it, a tall, looming structure with stained glass windows that glowed faintly. He pushed through the heavy doors and collapsed inside. The air inside was thick, stale. Candles burned at the altar, their flames flickering violently. And then, whispers. From the pews. From the rafters. From behind him. He turned, and his breath caught in his throat. The church was filled with people. But they were not alive. Chapter 5, The Truth About Blackwood. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow. Their mouths moved in silent prayer. Then, the smiling man appeared at the altar. "You've come at the right time," he said. "Blackwood must always have 312. Daniel's blood ran cold. The population sign. He was number 312. The doors slammed shut. The candles flickered out. And Daniel Carter was never seen again. The next morning, a new sign stood at the edge of town. "Welcome to Blackwood. Population, 312.